If you've been trying to fix your back with a stretching routine, you are probably missing the big picture.
Back resilience isn't built in a 10-minute mobility session.
Most people who deal with recurring back issues are already doing something. Stretching, foam rolling, and exercise they found online. Trying to be more consistent with their warm-ups.
And some of that really helps temporarily, but the stiffness keeps on coming back. That tightness returns, and they can't figure out why the effort isn't translating.
Because resilience isn't about the routine you do, it's about how your body is being used across the entire day.
Today, we're breaking down what back resilience actually means, why movement frequency matters more than most people realize, and the habits that either build or quietly erode it over time.
So if you're watching these, you are probably past the point of just wondering why your back hurts. You've done some research, you've tried some things, you are actively looking for what actually works.
And that's a really good place to be, because the fact that you're actually looking means that you're ready to make changes. The challenge is that there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of conflicting advice, and it can be hard to know what to actually prioritize.
I wanted to be honest about something here, because I live this personally. I train CrossFit like most mornings, as you know. Early session, then straight to work. And what I've noticed is that by the afternoon, after sitting at a desk for hours, my hips, my quads, my lower back, all tired. And I have to keep reminding myself to move around and do some stretch, reset.
And that's a pattern that's really common. Training hard in the mornings and then being sedentary for the rest of the day doesn't cancel out the sitting. The body still adapts to whatever position that it spends most time in.
And I noticed these even more clearly when I reduced my clinical hours to focus more on the business side. When I was treating clients for 4 days a week, I was on my feet all day, moving around the treatment table constantly. I felt significantly better, less stiff, less tired after training. Now, I'm at a desk for most of the day, and the difference in it's how my body feels is noticeable. It is not the training that change, it is the movement throughout the day that actually change.
And that's exactly what we wanted to unpack today, because of that experience Thiago just described is something that we hear from people all the time in clinic. Active people who can't understand why their body feels worse than it should. Let's start by redefining what we mean by resilience, because I think that word gets used loosely. When we talk about resilience in a resilient back, we're not talking about a back that never gets sore. That's not realistic. And honestly, it's not the goal.
So what is the goal?
The goal is a back that can handle the demands that you place on it, recover well between those demands, and adapt over time rather than breaking down. That's resilience, the capacity to load, recover, and keep functioning.
So it is less about being pain-free all the time and more about how well your body bounces back.
Exactly. And that's the distinction that matters, because a lot of people are chasing the absence of any discomfort, which can actually make them more cautious, more avoidant, and paradoxically, less resilient over time. A resilient back is a back that moves well, recovers well, and handles variety. And building that requires a specific kind of input.
Okay, so this is the one I think surprised people the most, because we live in a culture that values intensity. More effort equals more results.
And in some contexts, that's true. But when it comes to back resilience, frequency of movement throughout the day is more impactful than the intensity of a single session.
Can you explain why, please?
Sure, I can. So the joints, muscles, and connective tissue of the low back, it responds really well to regular low-level movement throughout the day. That movement then helps keep the joints lubricated. It also maintains blood flow to the surrounding muscles. It signals to the nervous system that the body is active and needs to stay responsive. When you compress all of your movement into 1 hour and then sit for the remaining 7 or 8 hours, the body doesn't distribute the benefit across the day. It gets a spike of activity and then a long period of adaptation back to stillness.
So the gym session is valuable, but it's not enough on its own.
No, it's not. It's not enough on its own. And this is something that took me a while to really appreciate clinically, because I see people who are genuinely fit, genuinely strong, who still have persistent back issues. And when I look at how they spend their day, the training hour is great, but then the other 15 waking hours are almost entirely sedentary.
And I think the comparison I mentioned earlier is perfect example of this. On days when I'm moving constantly, even without any formal exercise, my body feels better. Less restricted, less accumulated tension.
Exactly, because movement throughout the day is doing something more than what a single training session can replace. It's keeping the system ticking over, preventing it from stiffening up or accumulating in the first place.
So let's talk about movement variety, because I think this is another piece people miss.
Yeah, and this is very important. The low back, it's designed to move in multiple directions: flexion, extension, rotation, and lateral movements. All of these matter. And what tends to happen with people who sit a lot and then train is that their movement becomes quite narrow. A lot of forward and back, lots of flexion, extension, but very limited rotation, very limited lateral movements, and very little variety in the positions that the spine actually moves through.
So even if you are exercising and if you are always doing the same patterns, you are not building the full resilience.
Right, you're building strength and capacity in specific patterns, but the back needs variety to stay adaptable. And that variety doesn't have to come from a complex program. It can come from simply changing positions throughout the day, standing for a bit, walking, a few gentle rotations at your desk. Movements that take the spine through ranges it doesn't get in a standard training session.
So it is not about adding more to your routine. It is about making sure the routine isn't too narrow.
Exactly. More variety, not necessarily more volume.
Okay, so we've talked about what builds resilience. Let's talk about what quietly takes it away, because I think this is where people get surprised.
The biggest one is sustained stillness. We've covered this across the last couple of weeks, but it bears repeating. Long, unbroken periods of sitting erode the body's ability to manage load and recover effectively. And most people don't notice it happening because it's gradual.
Yeah, what else?
So skipping transitions. What I mean by this is going directly from sedentary state to a high demand movement without giving the body time to prepare. So sitting for 8 hours and then loading it straight into a deadlift, or waking up and going hard at a session before the body has had time to warm up properly. The body can handle a lot, but abrupt transitions between very different states increase the risk of the cup spilling over, like what we spoke last week with analogy.
So the warm-up isn't just a formality.
No, the warm-up is a transition. It's giving the body time to shift from one state to another. And then when people rush or skip this, it's removing the buffer that actually matters.
And I'll add one more from personal experience. Ignoring the signals. The afternoon tiredness I mentioned before, the body is communicating, and the habit of pushing through it without even a 2 minutes reset is one of those things that seems harmless in the moment, but compounds over time.
And that's the thing about habits. The ones that erode resilience are not usually dramatic. They're small, repeated things that accumulate quietly, just like the cup filling. Something I've noticed consistently in clinic is that the people with the most resilient backs are not always the ones who train the hardest.
That surprises people.
It does, because we have this assumption that the more fitness equals more resilience, and that is correlated, but not the same thing. The people whose backs handle load really well tend to be the ones who move consistently throughout their day, not just in the same training session. They stand more, they walk more, they take more breaks, and they change positions.
They are not necessarily doing more exercise. They are just less still.
Less still is a really good way to put it. And when you compare that to someone who trains intensely and then sits completely still for the rest of the day, the difference in how the back responds over time can be very significant.
And I think the honest version of that for me is that I'm still figuring out how to get this right. Because transitioning from being like on my feet treating clients to sitting at a desk all day has been real adjustment for my body. And it's made me much more intentional about building movement back into my day in other ways.
Which is actually a really useful mindset for anyone watching this. It's not about getting it perfect. It's about being intentional, noticing when you've been still for too long, and giving your body what it needs to stay responsive.
Okay, let's make this practical. What are the things someone can actually start doing this week?
The first one is movement breaks. Every 30 to 45 minutes, get up and move. It doesn't need to be structured. A walk around to get some water, standing up doing a few hip circles, gentle spinal rotation at your desk. The goal is just to interrupt that stillness regularly.
And if you need a prompt, set a timer. I use these. Sounds simple, but it works. Because when you are focused at work, time disappears.
Exactly. And the next one is to be really more intentional with your transition into training, especially if you're training after work or heading straight from a desk into a session. Give your body 15 minutes to shift into a state before you start to load it. Think about glute activation, mobility, and stretching.
Third is to think about variety in your movement. If your training is quite linear, lots of the same patterns, look for small ways to add rotation and lateral movement throughout your day. It doesn't have to be formal, just more movement.
And the last one is paying attention to early signals, like that afternoon tightness that Thiago mentioned, and then stiffness before training, and making sure that you're not ignoring it or not pushing through it, but you're responding to it.
Even 2 minutes of movement in response to that signal makes a difference. Over time, the habit compounds. Now, all of those things are generally useful starting points. And a lot of people building those habits will make a noticeable difference. But here's something worth considering. If you've been dealing with recurring stiffness or flare-ups and you are not sure whether the movements and habits you are building are actually right for your specific body, that's where a proper assessment becomes really valuable.
Because the principles that we've been talking about today apply broadly, but how we actually apply it to your body specifically depends on what's actually going on. How your low body is moving, what the restrictions are, how your hips are moving, and how your whole system is working together. Chiropractic assessment looks at all of this, not just the side of pain, but also the movement patterns and the compensations that are contributing to why that stiffness keeps on coming back.
At TT Chiropractic and Remedial Massage, our clinic, that's where we start with every patient, understanding the full picture before we talk about what care looks like. Because the right input for your body is more specific than a general list of exercises. And knowing what looks like for you means the effort you are putting in actually goes into the right direction. So if you are watching these and you are already putting in effort, already trying to do the right things, but stiffness keeps coming back, I want you to consider this. Effort in the wrong direction doesn't build resilience. It just keeps you busy.
Exactly. And understanding what your body specifically needs is what changes the outcome. Not just doing more, but doing the right things consistently for your body.
If you want clarity on what actually looks like for you, click the link in the description and book your consult with us. We will assess how your back's moving, where the gaps are, and what the most useful next steps look like for your specific situation.
Your back was made to move. Let's make sure that you're giving it what it actually needs.
No fluff, just care that works.